Today we're going to talk about polarizing filters and specifically the NiSi HUC Pro Circular Polarizer. So we're going to talk about a filter that should be in every landscape photographer's camera bag, and that's a polarizing filter. We'll take a look first at what a polarizing filter does and why it should be in your camera bag, and then we'll take a look at the specific filter, the NiSi HUC Pro Circular Polarizer, which is what I use on a regular basis. And I'll touch on some of its features, what I like about it, and what I don't like about it. So when you're out photographing landscapes and things like that, you've got the light coming into the landscape and it's bouncing and reflecting and often causing glare off of water or the green foliage in the image, or just moisture on the rocks. And that glare sort of leads to a loss of clarity and contrast in your image in the camera. So a way to sort of work around that is with a polarizing filter, you can put that in front of your lens and that'll help reduce the glare, which in turn gives you more clarity, more contrast. And the way that feeds out is that you get darker skies usually. So if you've got sky in the image, it'll darken the sky slightly. You'll get slightly more saturated colors so that the greens pop just a little more. Or if you've got moss or colorations on the rock, it'll pop a little more. Or even just the darkness of the rocks. Instead of being this watery glare off of them, you'll get through that glare and see the darkness and the textures of the rock and the contrast. So the polarizing filter helps give you that additional clarity, contrast, deeper tonal values, and increased saturation. So that's why you really sort of want one in your landscape photography bag, because it's just an easy way to improve your landscape photography straight out of camera. And a small byproduct of the polarizing filter is that you typically lose about a stop, maybe a stop and a third, depending on your filter that you're using, like an ND filter would do. So it sort of gives you a small ND filter effect as well, which is often helpful for when you're photographing water, because it lets you slow that shutter speed down just a touch more so that you can get that nice smooth water, as it either comes cascading over the falls or flows across the rocks in the stream. And that can be a nice added effect with the polarizing filter. That one stop is sometimes just enough, just what you need to get that more pleasing effect without having to bump all the way up to a full, a 3-stop, 6-stop, or 10-stop ND filter. So really, a polarizing filter should probably be one of the first filters you add to your camera bag as a landscape photographer and start using it, and it'll really help improve your images straight out of camera. So we're going to specifically talk about the NiSi HUC Pro Circular Polarizer. And a circular polarizer is obviously circular, and it's got threads on it, so it screws on to the front of your lens. This particular one's 82 millimeter, but this one is available from 46 millimeter to 95 millimeter, depending on what size of filter threads you have on your lens. On that note, I typically recommend checking your lenses, see which one has the largest filter size, go with that one. That's the filter to buy, and then use step down rings to get to your other lenses that might be smaller. That way you only have to buy the filter once, and you can use the less expensive step down rings to be able to use that filter on other lenses that might not have the same filter thread size. So this particular filter, it does have a waterproof and nano coating on it, and what that does is it helps it repel water and dust and dirt, and for when water, which will inevitably get on there, or dust or dirt, it makes it easier to clean off. So it just makes it helps repel it, but the stuff that does get on there, it makes it easier to clean. So if you're out photographing in the rain or waterfall spray or in a dusty, dirty environment, it just makes being able to clean it sort of quickly while out in the field a little easier by having those coatings. It also provides some protective element to keep it from getting scratched and stuff out in those conditions. So it does have that waterproof and nano coating on it. This one is actually a very slim design, so you can see it's very thin, and what that does is it helps so that when you're putting it on a wider lens, it can help reduce vignetting that you might get. Sometimes if the filter is too wide and you put it on a wide lens, you'll get some vignetting in the corners from the shadows or just the outer edges of that filter. So this is a very slim design, which helps reduce that from happening. And of course, the glass is made of high definition optical glass just to help minimize color contrast or poor quality. And that's one thing with filters I highly recommend. When you invest in a filter, don't go too cheap on a filter, because you've got these expensive lenses, and I've talked about this in even with ND filters or anything like that, but you've got these expensive lenses you're using on the front of your camera. Don't go cheap on your filter, because you're just going to compromise the quality of your lens. So do your research. I think NiSi makes good products and they're a good filter line to go with, but just be wary of the too cheap filters, whether we're talking ND filters or polarizers, just because you don't want to compromise the quality of the lens that you've probably spent a lot of money on. So this filter is the one I use all the time, predominantly with waterfalls and things like that, or on, just sort of days where there's a lot of haze in the air, because the filters can help cut through some of that haze. Like I noted, this is an 82 millimeter, which is the size of the filter size on my largest lens that I have. So, and then I use the step down rings to get down to the different sizes. So it works really well for that. It's, it is circular, so you can adjust it, turn it to get the polarizing effect you want. So you put it on your lens and turn it. With this particular one, I have not noticed any problems with optical quality or anything like that. Sometimes it can have a little bit of a warming effect, just a slight warming effect, and that's sort of normal through polarizing filters. NiSi does make a natural polarizing filter, which is supposed to not add that little bit of warmth to it. I haven't had a chance to try that one out, but that's what it's supposed to do. I have not found this one problematic. I tend to add just a touch of warmth to a lot of my images anyways, so it just sort of fits in well with that with no problem. As I noted earlier, this does knock about a stop off. I recently did a video where I was using it on a waterfall, and it was really right about a stop. I ended up removing it because I was trying to speed my shutter speed up, and so I took it off just to allow me to go a little faster, and it let me move about a stop. So this has proven to be right about a stop. The actual specifications say it could be a stop to 1.3 stops. I often find that that's actually what I want, because typically when I am photographing water or waterfalls, I am trying to get that blurred movement and I want a slightly slower shutter speed. So a lot of times I find if I just put this on, I don't necessarily need to put on a full ND filter, a 6-stop ND filter, depending on conditions, but that's a nice little match with this. So overall, I'm very happy with this filter. I do have one small complaint with it, and I'm pretty sure it's due to its thin design, because it has brass threads, but when I connect this to a lens or a step-up ring, I frequently have a difficult time getting it unscrewed and back off, and it seems to be more than normal. I've got an ND filter I use I almost never have that problem with, whereas this one, when I put it on, it tends to get stuck. It just takes a little bit of work to get off, and I think there's a couple things. One, it's ultra thin, so there's not a whole lot of things to grip onto. And because it's a circular polarizer, some of the width actually turns. You only have just a teeny little bit to grab to get it unscrewed off your lens. I think that's typically a problem with circular polarizers where you're putting them on the front anyways, because a lot of the step-up rings and other things come with warnings that, be careful. If you go too tight, they can get stuck. This has never been stuck, but I have been where it took me a little bit to get it off. Now, the way I sort of work around that is I do have a set of filter wrenches, which are these. And what these do is they help me get a grip if I need it. And I don't always have to use these, but I have them in my bag just in case. And then you can grip on the lens or the step-up ring on the one side, the filter on the other like this, and you can get a little more leverage to unscrew them. And I really wouldn't mention it so much because, like I said, it's sort of a common thing with circular polarizers is that threading. That's why I tend towards the brass ones. But my ND filter doesn't do that nearly as often, and the circular polarizer does. So I just want to call that out that, when you're getting into this ultra-thin design, I think it's just one of the cons of that ultra-thin design, and I do run into that problem. Nothing that can't be worked around with just a little bit of patience or the filter wrenches, but it is something, to be aware of, and that's probably my biggest complaint about this particular filter. So if you're looking for polarizing filter or you're learning about polarizing filters and you're off to go look, I highly recommend taking a look at the NiSi website, see what they offer out there. Like I said, this is an HUC Pro filter, 82 millimeter threads. Make sure to check the thread size or the filter size on your lens that you're going to use it with to choose the right one. But I think NiSi products are well worth taking a look at to consider for your polarizing filter. So I hope you liked today's video about polarizing filters. If you did, please hit that like button. And if you want to see future landscape photography content from me, including tips, tricks, gear reviews, behind the scenes looks, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any landscape photography content from me in the future. And thank you for watching.